This is NBK, nothing but Knicks. When Sim passed the assist, you know that it's #1 show that breaks down the game. If you can't play defense, stay out my way. Dribble the ball, come down the lane. 5 seconds on the shot clock, who gon' win us the game? You wanna hear Nick updates and trade rumors? Post-game reviews, this the place you tune in. Tell a friend just to keep the ball moving. Like the page if you feeling the movement. Every game we coming to win. Give us a sub like a player that came off the bench. This is NBK, nothing but Knicks.
Knicks family, what's poppin'? It's your boy, ladies and gentlemen. The New York Knicks will face off against the Cleveland Cavaliers game 1 of the NBA season. They're going to test their mettle early, heavyweight battle early on in the season. I think they play them on Christmas as well. Right, so the NBA is capitalizing on the New York Knicks already this season. What do you think about that, Tony? Knicks get a chance to prove their championship medal right off the top.
I mean, both teams, right? You know what I mean? Like, these are the two teams that are projected to be at the top of the Eastern Conference, you know, with Boston dealing with injuries and such, and Indiana, the same thing with Halliburton. So, yeah, the consensus is we should be the top two teams. So, yeah, why not see what each team is made of right from the jump?
Right from the jump, you know. And, you know, the thing is with the Knicks, I wouldn't be surprised if the Knicks got blown out.
Already?
I wouldn't be surprised. The same way it happened with Boston last year. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened because the Knicks are going to be figuring themselves out. Right?
Nah,
you know,
I'm not rocking.
I mean, that's what happened with Boston, right? And then we beat them in the playoffs.
It is, but here's the thing. Boston was coming off a championship. Boston was coming off for a ring ceremony. Boston was you know what I mean? Like, they was feeling themselves. I don't think the Cavs are coming into the season with the same type of confidence that they might have had coming into last year.
I think
if anything, I think they got things to figure out just as much, if not even more.
I don't know. I think they're coming in they might be coming in with a chip on their shoulder that they feel like they should have been in the Eastern Conference Finals. I mean, they failed. Not that anything happened. They failed. So they might have a little chip on their shoulder. And, you know, they've been together for a little while. They got that. They got that, you know, the Knicks don't have that yet. Now, there's going to be a lot of energy in the Garden, but I think there's going to be a totally new system in place.
I think we blow them out. So
I don't know.
I say we blow them out.
And to me, it's not an indication of the season.
I agree.
At all. It's just an indication that there's some new stuff going on with the New York Knicks, and they got to figure out what we're doing. You know what I'm saying? How do we play? Like, what's our style of play? You know, you can come into the season, you can come into, like Tyson said, everybody knows what to do, so they get punched in the face. So you come into the season and you have a projected style of play, and then when things actually start happening, you figure out, well, this is how we really have to play. You know what I mean? So I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying I wouldn't be surprised if it did happen because the Knicks might be figuring out who they are, how they play, you know what I'm saying? What calls Mike Brown likes in certain situations, all those type of things. Mike Brown figuring out his new players. You know, obviously they'll have 4 games or something in the preseason, but that's not going to be enough.
I feel the exact opposite. I agree that it's not an indication of the season or what's to come or who's better, but I think we blow them out. We're coming off not, you know what I mean, the firing of a coach. This the first real game with a new coach. You know what I mean? Like, usually that juvenates a team. You know what I mean? yes, it's a new system, but I don't know. I feel like I could see us smacking them, especially at home. You know what I mean? I think we got the same chip on our shoulder or the same, you know what I mean, something to prove mentality.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So I would say the opposite, but I agree that whichever way it goes,
It,
blowout, close game. You know what I mean? Like it's
yeah,
game one. It's not an indication of
it's not an
you know what I mean,
indication.
what's to
Go
move,
out,
what it
close
is moving
game.
forward.
Yeah, I don't think anything's an indication. It's going to be a fun night. You know what I mean? Because the energy is going to be in the building. You got the Cleveland Cavaliers. Um, Donovan Mitchell coming into the Garden. New coach, new system, couple of new players on the team. It's gonna be a fun night at the Garden, and it's on ESPN.
And here's what I'll say about the difference between last year and this year, right?
Mhm.
And you've mentioned it a bunch of times in regards to Thibodeau having to figure things out on the fly because Cat was just brought there. You know what I mean? With Mikhail was kind of was just brought there, so those guys had to get acclimated to
The
Tibbs
flat.
and the system that was already there. Now everybody is learning at the same curve, the same pace. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it's new
Yes.
to everybody. So that
Yes.
might be more beneficial than you know what I mean?
I mean, it could be because, but it also could be a little more detrimental because they may not be on the same page. The players may not be on the same page as far as the system because they haven't had time to really grow in it. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how much Mike Brown uses his primary rotation in the preseason, right?
Or how much he experiments.
Or how much he experiments. If it was Thibodeau, you know, putting in something new or whatever, he's going to use his guys in the preseason so that they can learn it. It's going to be interesting to see how much Mike Brown uses those guys in the preseason, um, you know, so that they can start figuring out the system, figuring out situations. Hopefully, in practice, they're doing situational basketball, and figuring out how things are going to go with this new system. You know what I mean? I mean, there's so much to learn. There's so much that Mike Brown has to learn about the players, and figuring out who to play in certain situations, what lineups work best together, with the way that he wants to play, whatever that's going to be. You know what I mean? I know we all speculate what it's going to be, but really, he probably doesn't really know until he actually gets out there with those guys. He's going to come in with a template,
Mm-hmm.
right? And how he figures these guys are going to play from his experience and how he's seen all of these guys throughout the years. And then when they actually start playing together, it's going to adjust.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to change a little bit. You know what I mean? And so that preseason is really going to be important, I think. Preseason is going to be it's going to be critical in this basketball team building chemistry because while it's not a new team, there's going to be more chemistry coming in as far as the players are concerned, but there's also going to be a new system. So everyone's going to be learning that new system. So they've got to learn how to play together in that system. You know what I mean? So they're going to have things that they've done, some of your base things, running a pick and roll, doing things like that. They'll have that. But then in the new system, there's going to be new ways to use players, understanding how, within this system, guys, where they're supposed to cut,
There's definitely
all of those things, all those little
it's,
things.
it's definitely going to be more learning and more adjustments all across the board, right? Like
Mhm.
even if you think about the two intricate bench pieces that we added to the team, and how they fit and how they fit in different rotations. So you know what I mean? So anytime these guys, we know the guys that play together, but anytime you add Yabusele to the mix and take somebody out, that's an adjustment for all 5 guys. Anytime you add a Clarkston to the mix and take somebody out, that's an adjustment for all 5 guys. You know what I mean? And then the bench as a whole, that's an adjustment if they're playing a bench unit. You know what I mean? Like without starters or whatever the case. So I agree that there's a whole lot more adjusting for us, and I mean that's the intriguing part. Like, how long does it really take? We talked about it clicking last year, right? And even last year, I was on record like I thought it was gonna take a full year for you know what I mean, for us to peak and really find gel and find the roles for everybody. It's almost
Well,
the same exactly.
year
It's
one
almost the same thing again. It's
This
year
is
one again.
This is year one again. So you know what I mean? That's that. This is year one.
But the talent has increased.
Talents, yes, definitely more talent.
You know what I mean? So I guess it's back to enjoy the ride again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean that's what it is. It's definitely more talent to use. More tools. Mike Brown has tools at his disposal. And hopefully there'll be more talent coming. You know what I mean? But it's gonna take a little while. It's gonna take a little while. Um, we'll see what it's gonna look like. I can't wait for preseason because there's gonna be so much to learn from the preseason. So much to learn about how this basketball team will operate. All the players seem to be, feeling good about the season, have the same mindset as far as, you know, um, wanting to win a championship. I'm not expecting the Knicks to win a championship this year. I'm not even going to be mad if they don't go to the NBA Finals this year, right? Because I know that there's a lot of growth that needs to be had with this basketball team. Given that it's year one, but the excitement. I don't know if the excitement's. There's a lot of excitement coming into the season. It feels like the years 94 to 98 to 99. You know what I mean? It feels like that. I can't wait. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like the time is now for this team. Yeah, we have players under contract, and we can, 5 years of 4 to 5 years of this basketball team, this group together, so they have some time to grow. But it still feels like the time is right now. Go get it as early as possible. You know what I'm saying, and then grow with that. You know what I mean? So I'm super excited coming into the season. Ticket prices are going to be outrageous. They're going to be off the charts. You know what I'm saying? But the building is going to be packed nonetheless. No, I don't know if I'm going to Dubai. I would love to go to Dubai, but right now my money is wrapped up in other things besides going to Dubai. You know what I mean? I'll be there in spirit, though, my brother. No doubt about that. You know what I mean? I'll definitely be there in spirit. I don't know. How do you expect? We don't know what the exact schedule is right now, but how do you expect the Knicks to open the season?
I think shout out to this guy in the chat.
Amani the Great from Minneapolis. And Mr. Sims, I think with Mike's offense, the way he ran Sacramento, I think we're really going to be a fast team. Do you think? I'll answer that in the question in a second. I'll come back to that. Go ahead, Tony.
But that's my answer is yes, and that's what I expect out the gate. The pace to increase from jump. Like if there's one thing that Mike Brown has preached, it's been pace. Now we've heard that from the previous coach as well. You know what I mean? And we've had that debate whether it's personnel or not. But I also think there's things you can implement to increase the pace. There's guys on the team that we could have utilized to increase the pace. I expect that. I expect us to be a lot faster, a lot more motion in the offense. I expect the offense to increase. And we was top 5 last year. I I, I can't see us being under top 3.
Mm-hmm. Do we play fast? I don't know yet. You know what I'm saying? In my brain, I don't know. I don't feel like we have these super fast players. So I know we have to play with the speed of the basketball, not the speed of our feet.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Because I don't think we'll be successful playing with the speed of our feet because, you know, I don't think we have that kind of speed. So in order to play fast, getting up and down the floor, and there's a few different ways to play fast, but in order to
Mm-hmm.
play getting up and down the floor type of fast, we're gonna have to go by ball movement, right? Moving the ball up the floor, pass, 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 passing the ball ahead on every single available possession. I mean, you can't do it on every possession. When I say available possession, when the opportunity is there, you're always looking ahead, and you can create those opportunities by always looking ahead anytime you
Mm-hmm.
get the ball,
And
right?
that's what
Hmm.
I don't think we did last year. I'm not gonna point to anybody who missed it, but I'll say OG was a guy who was constantly running the floor and trying to put himself in position to out outbeat his man, in the paint. A lot of times he was running, and it wasn't getting the ball. Mitchell Robinson, obviously not last year because he didn't play much, but I mean, we've heard him talk about, hey, I'm out here for cardio because he's constantly running the floor and maybe not getting opportunities. I think those opportunities will start to manifest this year.
Yeah, the thing is, the players have to be in the mindset to look up, right? To make that pass up. You have some players who do that naturally. That's how they play. Lonzo Ball, right? That's what he does. Anytime he gets the ball, he's looking to pass the ball ahead. That's just in his DNA. Tyrese Halliburton, that's how he plays. I'm looking to pass the ball ahead to see what's up, to see what's in front of me and get that ball up the court. Um,
Even
and
non-ball handlers like Kevin Love, which I envision Cat could, you know, fill that kind of role in getting the rebound and just looking ahead. I think Cat does it a little bit. I don't think he does it every time.
yeah,
But part of that also was, let's be honest, it was the system. Because I think the first place we always looked was Brunson. You know
well,
what I mean? Whether
may,
he
I
was
mean,
up the court or not, you know what I mean? He was the
right.
first look 90% of the time.
I mean, it's hard to say. There were times when you would hear push it up, right? And we're still dribbling the ball up. Some of it is habit. So Mike Brown has to create that habit within the
Mhm.
players, right? Has to figure out how to create that habit from any time that I've seen Brunson play from Dallas to New York to Villanova, he's dribbled the ball up the floor. You know what I'm saying? That's who he is. That's his style of play. Can he be retrained to push the ball ahead by passing it ahead? It'll come back. You know what I'm saying? But the style of play that I've always seen him is to dribble the ball up the floor, which is the reason why I've been calling for that for Ben Simmons, right? That'll push the ball ahead, be the guy that gets the ball out, up the sidelines, up the floor quickly. You know what I'm saying? It'll always come back around to Brunson at some point in time because you're not always going to find a shot when you push the ball ahead. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? And a lot of times he's going to be, he'd be the guy getting the ball ahead, getting the ball out on a break too. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, uh the players, all of them have to build that habit, and it's got to start in training camp. How do you
Yep.
build that habit to push the ball ahead? Cat gets the rebound, he can throw the ball ahead. We've seen him doing it. He can throw the baseball pass. We've seen it happen. I get afraid that I'll take the chance. I'll take the chance to build the habit. You know what I mean? But I know Cat will throw some crazy passes out there because You know, he likes to showboat a little bit, so he might throw a couple of crazy ones out there. You know what I mean? But I guess you've got to take that in order
You
to
gotta
build.
live with it.
You know what I'm saying? And then like so you teach it, tell him to do it, and then if it starts to get crazy, you pull him back a little bit, right? So then he learns the balance. You know what I mean? So you know, we can probably expect that. We might be a higher turnover team from the beginning of the season if
Mhm.
we're trying to push the ball ahead that way. You know, the more passes, the more chances that the ball is going to get turned over. But you take that if it's going to create higher efficiency shots. You know what I mean? You accept that. So, you know, there's gonna be a lot of transition. And then, you know, it's not just playing fast through transition, but also in the half court because we're still gonna play a lot of half court basketball. You know, the ball's gotta pop though. Pop, 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 shot. You know what I mean? Instead of dribble, 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 dribble. You know, the ball's gotta pop. You know what I mean? It's gotta, you know, that's another way to play with pace. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to mean that you're just pushing the ball up and getting quick shots. You know, that's fast, but also pace is how quickly that ball can swing around the perimeter to get to open shooters. You know what I mean? How long does someone keep the ball in their hands before they decide they don't have a shot and they move it on to somebody else? You know, so you know that's another way that a team can play with pace. You know what I mean? By moving that ball, you know, not holding it, not allowing it to stick. So, you know, and this team has been, you know, let the ball stick and go one on one. So there's, you know, a lot of habits that have to be broken down and then rebuilt. So our training camp preseason is going to be essential for this team to rebuild or build those habits. So we will see. We will see. You know, it's gonna be a fun season. Maybe the funnest season that we've had in a while. You know what I mean? Funnest season we've had in a while. Ladies and gentlemen, you can call in 516-362-5212. I'll put it up. So you can call in if you want to, because I do want to hear your thoughts on how the Knicks will start the season, first game of the season, all of that. Not only do we have the first game of the season was announced today, but you know the Knicks have made some hires. Mike Brown has filled out his coaching staff. You got Chris Gent, the associate head coach, and the de facto offensive coordinator. TJ Saint is an assistant coach. You got Brendan O'Connor, who'll be the defensive coordinator. Charles Allen, Ricardo Foyce are joining as assistants. They worked with Mike Brown in Sacramento. Um, how do you
Gent
feel
work.
about? Say that again.
No, I was gonna say Gent worked with him in Cleveland, right?
Oh, maybe so. Yes, they worked together in Cleveland. How do you feel about how it works? You know, with the de facto offensive coordinator, um, the de facto defensive coordinator. How do you feel about how those things work in the NBA?
I mean, to me, it's relatively new, right? Because I'm a Knicks fan, so I don't recall this ever really being a position that we've been in with, you know, a head coach. And I mean, obviously, if we were before Tibbs, it wasn't successful. You know what I mean? But we know Tibbs wasn't really. It was his philosophy, his thought process. He wasn't really taking much input. So I like the possibilities, right? There's been so many things. For instance, you've been talking about a zone, and why we haven't utilized the zone at all for the past 4 or 5 years, right? Maybe now we see a zone. You know what I mean? So, just to see some different styles, some different actions, some different trying new things. That's the exciting part for me. You know what I mean? Obviously, you're gonna stick to what's successful, but sometimes you got to try things when things aren't working. So I think that's the most positive thing I could say about it. Like, but it's still new. I'm gonna be watching. The funny thing is, I don't know who to credit for what at this point either. You know what I mean? Like, if the offense starts being the best we've ever seen, is that a credit to Mike Brown or is that a credit to Christian? You know what I
I
mean?
mean, for me, it's always going to come back to Mike Brown because he has the final word, right? It's always going to come back to Mike Brown, and I would expect in interviews or post games when it fails, Mike Brown will take he'll
Responsibility
take
and
responsibility
probably share credit when it's
and
successful.
he,
Oh,
and he share
Jet
credit when it's
told me to
successful.
do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Or this guy mentioned this point. So I mean,
yeah,
that's what the head coach is supposed to do.
right. But it's always going to come back to Mike Brown, and he may not say anything either way. You know what I'm saying? But it's always going to come back to Mike Brown. I think part of what we're seeing right now with well, I mean, anytime an assistant coach is hired, everyone knows about it. But I feel like there's been more emphasis on it this year than in years past. And I think that's intentional by the Knicks, you know what I'm saying, to put a little more emphasis on because even the assistant coaching search was in depth, you know what I'm saying, and was publicized. I think it's intentional um, so that they can try to prove a point, I think, that this guy is Mike Brown is going to be cooperative and I forgot the words that they used before when they hired him, but work with everybody and all
Mhm.
those type of things. You know what I mean? I think they're doing that to make the point. I know it's always been out there that Tibbs didn't use his assistants. Um, my argument has always been we don't know what has gone on in the locker room. I mean, in the war room when they're planning, how they're planning, what the assignments were, who were, who was supposed to do what, you know, So I don't have that kind of intel. You know
Well,
what I mean?
the,
I think in the end, it's going to be pretty much the same. Like, they'll sit down and you have someone in charge. Well, he'll have someone in charge of the offense. So that's definitely something that's going to be different as far as we know. He'll have someone in charge of the defense. Um, Game time, the decision is going to be his. They may say, "Hey, remember this play," but he's got to say, "Yeah, let's do it," or "Let's not do it." You know what I'm saying? So he's going to make that final call. Um,
and I mean, the good thing is they're giving him his guys um year one, right?
mhm,
We still got a couple of hangovers from last year, you know what I mean? But they're giving him his guys year one. I think Tibbs had to wait a year, right? Before he could bring in his
true.
guys that he wanted to he was familiar with. So this gives Mike Brown some comfort level, right?
Mhm,
He don't gotta be looking over his shoulder or feeling some kind of way about the guys in his group. He selected these guys. They have prior relationships, prior working relationships. So
mhm.
that's a good thing from the jump. It gives him a level of comfortability from the beginning. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah, yeah. And I don't know if when Tibbs was hired, maybe those guys weren't available. There could have been anything, as far as why the front, why they weren't hired at the time that Tibbs started. But um, it's not now looking at the way things panned out, right? Because in the beginning, people thought, well, they're just going to pick his coaching staff, and I was like, nah, that's not cool, right? Mike Brown has gotten to play the people he wants in his coaching staff, and so when you look at it now, you say it's not a bad idea to have some holdovers because it keeps the continuity. You have coaches there who are familiar with the players are familiar with them. So now those guys can go into the war room and say, yeah, this is how this guy reacted last year to certain situations. Here's this guy's personality. Like your new coaches can get that kind of intel about the players from a coaching standpoint. You know what I mean? When you have some holdovers. So, that's a good thing. You know what I mean? To have those holdovers to keep the continuity for the players. So the players have some familiarity with coaches. So they're not just coming in, And they look around the gym and every single coach is new. It's like, okay, who am I cool with? Now
And
they
yeah,
gotta figure that out.
and I'm sure they have specific roles. Like we know Bryant, his name is the big man coach, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's still there. You know what I mean? And we credit him to Hukporty's growth throughout the season. You know what I mean? Mitchell Robinson, I know he worked with him. You know what I mean? So the fact that he's had an impact on these guys, that role doesn't affect the actual day-to-day or the game-to-game coaching. This is like day-to-day coaching. You know what I mean? With a big man specific. You got Mo Cheeks, who's really a guard coach. You know what I mean? Like, and so he got his guards that he could work with. So it doesn't affect, I don't think, Mike Brown's like the philosophy and the strategy part. It's really about that work you got to put in individual growth. So I think those guys, they don't hurt his, you know what I mean? They don't hurt being there. They only help the individuals, and then you know what I mean. You got the rest of the coaching staff that are working on strategies and offense or defense. So everybody has. Again, I'm gonna go in depth in this at a later time, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think it's always a good thing. Getting back to the breakup of de facto offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. It's not like football, right? So it's not like those guys are going to be somewhere calling in plays to Jalen Brunson. I think it's more like, okay, Chris Gent, you're the associate head coach, but what I need you to do is you don't talk to me about the defense at all. Only talk to me about the offense. You know what I'm saying? Design the offense. Me and you are going to collaborate. We're going to design the offense. I'm using your brain power. I'm going to use my experience and what I've learned. I'm going to learn from you. But we're going to design this offense. And then when we're in the games, I need you looking at adjustments and how we adjust the offense because I'm managing the game. I'm managing everything that's going on in the game. So I need you to look at adjustments, timeouts. We can talk before we go to the timeout. We can talk before we go to the locker room at halftime. We can talk about these adjustments. If there's something that you really have, come whisper it to me or whatever it is. But I need you just focusing there. Brendan O'Connor, I think, defensive coordinator. I need you just looking at the defense. Don't talk to me about the offense. Right? Talk to me about the defense. I need you only focusing on the defense. Same thing as with Chris Gent. I need you only focusing on the defense. Design a defense that fits this basketball team. I need you to teach this basketball team the defense. Same thing with Chris Gent teaching offense, right? When we're in practice, I need you to run the defense. I'm watching, I'm learning. I'm going to know the ins and outs of the defense, but I need you to be the master of it. And I need you to let me know when the adjustments need to be made. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to make the final call. So, you'll see me talking to Jalen Brunson because there's got to be one voice. There can't be, it's just different than football. There can't be several voices. And then Brunson's over like, no, well, Chris told me to do this. And Mike Brown's like, well, I said to do this. There's got to be one voice.
The difference between football number one is you got a defensive squad and an offensive squad.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
The defense squad ain't hearing the offensive guy's voice
right.
at all. You know what I mean? Like, so,
right. So it's got to be, boom. Brendan O'Connor is managing. He's in charge of that defense. And he's designing the defense that he thinks will work. In some way, though, that offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator have got to communicate in some ways because you want your defense to put you in good positions on the offensive side, too, when it comes to transition. You know what I'm saying? If you're scrambled defensively, you may not be in a proper position offensively when you get when you get the rebound. So, somehow, some way, those two have got to communicate and know how that transition looks and works. And the same thing going the other way. If you're running an offense that's just crazy, you may not be in a proper position to get back and transition to defense. You know what I'm saying? So they've got to be able to communicate so they can know, okay, this is the offense that he's running. This is where guys are. Okay, so since you're here, there, and there, when it's time to transition on defense, this is what I need you to do. And it may seem easy to people like, oh, just get back on defense, but it's not always that easy. You know what I'm saying? Yes, you get back on defense, but, when there's specific defensive assignments, you know what I'm saying? You got to know, like, for example, let's just say Deuce is assigned to Donovan Mitchell, and you tell him don't leave his side. But at the same time, when a shot goes up, Deuce is at the top of the key, and he's the first person that's got to get back on defense, right? Well, if his assignment was not to leave Donovan Mitchell's side, you may have to say, listen, this guy's not getting back on defense after the shot. He's going to find Donovan Mitchell, Josh Hart, whoever. You got to be the one to get back. Just little things like that.
Not just that, cross matchups was the thing.
Yeah,
that's what hurt the Knicks more than anything when it came back to getting back on transition. Because everybody, like you saying, they know their assignments, but when there's a pick and a cross matchup or whatever the case, you know what I mean? Now, it may not even be Deuce at that point. It may be the guy who got switched on to Mikal that didn't be, you know what I mean, that lost his guy on a fast break because of a cross matchup. So I think that hurt us more than anything.
Yeah, so that communication has got to go, it has got to work. Then all of it has to flow through Mike Brown. You know what I mean? And then and I'm sure it's not the first time in the league it's been like this. I mean, I'm pretty positive plenty of coaches have assigned this guy to the offense and this guy to the defense. You know what I'm saying? So, we'll see how it works. I think it'll work. I think, I don't see why it wouldn't work. You know what I mean? You have coaches who are in charge of substitutions. You have coaches who are in charge of out of bounds plays. It happens like that all the time. So I don't see any reason why it wouldn't work. It's just, it still has to flow through Mike Brown, and you have to make sure that it's one voice. It's Mike Brown's voice. You know what I'm saying? Because if it ends up being more than one voice, that's when splits can begin to happen. You know what I'm saying? So it has to be one voice. Yeah, he's doing the coordination, but the instructions come down through Mike Brown. Little things that you could talk about. Obviously, assistant coaches are going to talk about little things. Hey, when he does this, do this, and those type of little things. But your major calls always have to come from the head coach. Now, unless the head coach tells the team, Chris Gent's running this huddle. You know what I'm saying? And it doesn't have to be every time, but the players know if Chris Gent is running the huddle, Mike Brown gave him the authority to do so.
And if you say Chris Gent's running the huddle, I don't think at that point you're coming in to make any adjustment to where he said. You know what I mean? Like at that point, you're gonna give him that huddle, right? You know what I mean? Like,
you give him the reins to the huddle, you step back and you watch, just like an assistant coach. You know what I'm saying? And let them do what they do. Because you don't want to say, no, don't do that, because now you undermine his leadership. You know what I'm saying? And it looks like it's split. If he makes the play, if you don't even like it,
you might just let that play rock.
You gotta let it rock. Unless it's like game 7 NBA final shot. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? But you gotta let it rock, and then you talk about it, later on in the coach's
privately.
Meeting. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? You talk about privately, because you don't want to show any split to the you don't want to show any splits to the
I never really heard too much about splits amongst coaching staffs. Really, you know what I mean? Like and more so, I've heard about certain players gravitating to certain coaches. You know what I mean? Like, oh, this
Yeah.
assistant coach, he was so cool with this particular player. You know
Right.
what I mean? And this particular player was his guy was this guy. So
Yeah.
I think that's still healthy. You know what I mean? Without it necessarily being a detriment. And again, the fact that these are Mike Brown's guys,
Mm-hmm.
like handpicked, I don't think
Oh yeah.
that's really something to worry about. You
No.
know what I mean?
Right.
Now on the flip side, if it wasn't his hand selected guys,
It
now
could be an issue.
it could be an issue, and it could happen organically. You know what I mean? Like it could have happened. I shouldn't even say organically, but it could happen just because of a disagreement and not having a knowledge of this person's personality and or him not having knowledge of your personality. Sometimes personalities clash just because they're new. You
Think
know,
they
you
know.
know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Sean said Sim is trying to run the Knicks like they're the New York Giants. I mean, hey, this is what the Knicks put out there. That someone's the offensive coordinator and someone's the defensive coordinator. I didn't make that up. But I'm gonna tell you what, just quickly talking about the Giants, I'm excited for the Giants season. I'm excited. You know what I'm saying? We got some good things happening. We got some good young players. Jackson Dart looks legit. You know what I'm saying? If he doesn't start by the end of this season, he's starting next season. I was at the Buffalo Giants preseason game on last Saturday, this Saturday that passed. I think that kid is the truth. I think he's the truth, and he's got a good name, Jackson Dart. I like the name. You know what I'm saying? Hey, he's the truth, man. So anyway, we'll get off the Giants, but I'm looking forward to the Giants season 2. I'm excited about it. Got the toughest schedule in the league, but I'm excited about the season. You know what I mean? Uh, I do want to get back to what do you expect from the beginning of the season, though? You muted.
I think we start off strong, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I think we hit the ground running. Again, there's been a gap, obviously, in time between adjusting to a new coach or whatever. But most teams that get that new coach, that first year, you see the difference. Whether it's a long-term thing or not, you know what I mean? Like just because of that breath of fresh air type situation. You know what I mean? Like now,
Mm-hmm.
granted, there's more pressure on everybody than ever before, too. But this is what they want, right? They're in a position to be who they want to be. And that's contenders playing for a championship. I know
Yeah.
they felt they were right there last year. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I was we know these guys for the most part, right? Um, these guys look to get better year in and year out. They look to improve on what mistakes they did last year. Like that's what we've seen from Brunson, from Hart. You know what I mean? Like the main core. You know what I mean? OG, I think he fits that bill. He was a lot more consistent last year than his first half year with us. You know what I mean? And I think he's gonna build on his season. Yeah, I think we right there. I think we hit the ground running. Like I wouldn't be surprised if we have the same type of run that the Cavs had last year.
Oh no. I mean,
That's
I'm
the
not.
way I'm
I
feeling.
don't think we're gonna start bad. You know. Um. I think we'll be above 500. I don't know if I see it starting that way.
I think the legitimacy of this team is more real now than it was last year.
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
or even a year before. Like I think teams and players and viewers had a lot more questions about the team last year and the year before. You know what I mean? Like even with the success, I think now the fact that I don't think people are just calling us contenders. You know what I mean? I think it's a fact.
No,
you
I mean, I
know what I
just
mean?
think,
Like,
yeah, I'm not worried. I think we're a contender. I just think that that first 20 games is going to be us figuring out how to play. You know what I'm saying? In a new system, et cetera, et cetera. Only a couple of new players. It's only two new players, so that's really good for the team because you got continuity amongst the players. But now just figuring out how you're playing with Mike Brown's system, I think there's gonna be an adjustment there. You know what I'm saying? So I think that first 20 games, I don't know, what was Cleveland like? 19-1 or something crazy. You know what I'm saying? 17-3 or something like that. I don't know if I see that. I think I see us, being above 500. But you can see the potential. We're learning. Maybe December we really, really go on a run. January we're on a hot run. You know what I'm saying? And we're growing and getting better. Um, you know, I,
50,
I'd be afraid if we jumped off to a real hot start that it was more energy than actual, our strategy is working. I'd feel more comfortable if we started off, we're above 500, 5, 6, 7 games above 500 and gradually got better. I'd feel more comfortable. I'd feel more comfortable that way. But I mean, and that's kind of how I think it's going to go. I just think that they're going to be learning and there'll be some thinking from the beginning instead of playing. And as we get midway through the season, then it's going to become more reaction instead of thinking. And that's
I
when we
think
get
I think it's gonna be 15-5 minimum. And the only time this is the difference. We first of all, I'm comfortable with this team thinking because we got guys that have high basketball IQ. You know what I mean? And
not that
especially
kind of thinking, though. I'm not talking about that kind of thinking.
well, let me finish my thought because I think the difference is with Cleveland last year in particular, right?
Hmm.
Even with I forgot the other team, but I said this about two teams. They hadn't faced any adversity. You know what I mean? They were smacking teams. So that's the difference when I say I think we're gonna be smacking teams and get off to a good start, 15-5. We may not be tested in that 15-5 run. You know what I mean? Like, but when we start to get tested and we gotta get to close games and then it becomes a thinking game. I'm even more comfortable because of the closer we have, you know what I mean, and the high basketball IQ guys on our team.
Right. But
So
that's not the kind of thinking I'm talking about. I'm not talking about that kind of thinking. I'm talking about
second
the, hes-
guessing
the
or
hesitation on making this pass because is this the pass that we're supposed to be making at this point in time? Um, the getting used to the habit. If say the new habit is to push the ball up the court. Oh damn, I'm still dribbling too many dribbles. Coach said 3 dribbles before we get the ball up. I took 8. You know what I'm saying? Like those type of thinking.
but I
You know what
think
I'm
that
saying?
I think that only happens when the moment is crucial. You're
Nah, I,
like
I don't.
like
I
I
don't.
I, I think I think
I
I
think
think I'm not saying it won't happen. I don't think it affects like you're able to live with those things when you're pushing the pace or when like you said it's a acknowledgement when you're playing faster and this is what you're running. Those mistakes are gonna
right.
happen and be
But what I'm
part of it.
saying, right, that's what I'm saying about us not starting like 15-5, above 500, but those hesitations lead to mistakes that add up to maybe more losses than you might expect because you're thinking about what am I supposed to be doing instead of just being natural. Eventually it becomes I don't have to think about what this play is. Okay, coach called in this play. Oh, what is it again? Where is everyone supposed to be at? And so now you're on the court, really trying to figure out where people are supposed to be. Someone's not in the right spot. You know what I'm saying? because because you haven't done it, you don't have the familiarity with it yet, because you haven't done it thousands of times yet. Eventually you don't have to think. You don't even have to call the play out, because people get up the court and they're already set up, and you see the set and you say, okay, they're already set up, and then we might as well run it like this. And then you go and do it without even calling it out, because it's already set up that way. And people go to spots naturally because you've been doing it, where in the beginning, people are like, oh, am I supposed to be over here? Am I supposed to hand this off? Like, we've seen it, like when new players come to the team, and you can see even Deuce being like, no, you're supposed to go over there. You're supposed to be there. Now it's holding things up. Right. And it's not getting movement. That's the type of thinking I'm talking about. You're thinking instead of reacting. Right. When you're reacting, you're automatically in spots. You don't even think about going there. You just go. It just happens. Your body just goes there, because now it's second nature. And then when you get to the part of the game where you do have to think about strategy, you don't have to worry about where everyone is, because everybody knows where they are. So now it's just like, okay, we got this amount of time on the clock. We got this, we got that, we got that. What's the best thing to do? You know what I'm saying? And you don't have to worry about, are people in the right spots, because they're already there. You know they're going to be there. But in the beginning of the season, when you're kind of learning it, now when you get to that thinking part, you're like, damn, he's not where he's supposed to be. Like, one person might know it, one person doesn't. He's not where he's supposed to be. All right, how are we going to do that? Okay, let me tell him you got to get there. And they're over there like, what are you talking about? You know what I'm saying? So it's those type of things that I'm talking about, that you got to.
It only takes one person to break the play. I agree to not be on the same page.
Yeah. So I think that, it's going to take some time to just learn all of those things, especially if the whole playbook is new and you've learning all of that. I think it'll take a little bit of time to, if we're talking about the type of overhaul that people want, I think it takes a little bit of time to bring that continuity. And then we're talking about new defenses as well. You know what I'm saying? So naturally in the beginning, I think when you're putting in something new, there'll be some breakdowns, you know what I'm saying, of that until they learn it. So that's why I think there's going to be, I'm not saying they're going to start below 500, but I don't know if they jump out the gates like that. And it's not that I don't believe Sean. It's just I've coached for a lot of years, and I've seen how long it can take, for things to get motoring. And Sean, yeah, Jackson Dart, I do think he's legit. Off of 1/4, whatever you want to call it, 1/2, I think the dude is legit. Some things you can just see right out the gate. You can see it. You can see the instinct. You can see it. He's legit. Go ahead and buy you a Jackson Dart jersey. Don't be afraid of it. The kid is legit.
How long do you think it takes the team to get on the same page? And from the coach's perspective, how soon do you identify who is, what I mean, who's going to take a little bit more time than somebody else? If you understand what I'm saying, because like again, it only takes one guy to break the play, to mess up the play. You know what I mean, to misread something. And so
shoot, I think the coaches can recognize who is going to take a little longer early, especially someone who like Mike Brown, who's been around players, been around the league for a while. He can look at a player and see. He could probably look at a player and see that guy's personality and be like, yeah, that's what, because you see the same players and the same personalities over and over and over.
So do you adjust until that guy is ready, or do you slow the progress up until the guy's ready? You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I think you put the guy, if he's an impact player, you put him out there.
Assuming he is.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, he's an impact player. You put him out there and let him play until you decide, well, he ain't getting it at. Now, if it's a super impact player, then you almost have no choice but to keep them out there, because even when they're messing up, they're still better than everyone else on your team. If they're messing up. So if it's a super impact player, you got to keep them out there. If it's a player that's on the margins, you can be like, well, yeah, he's good, but this guy does this, and this consistently, and it's better for our team. It's better, it makes the offense run better, the defense run better. I'm gonna use this guy, even though this guy might be more talented or something like that. You know what I mean? So I think if it's an impact player, that guy's gonna play. You got to play your players. You know what I mean? And you keep working with them, because what they bring to the table outweighs what they don't bring to the table.
But at no point do you adjust.
What do you mean?
If a guy is, I think, like, try to use his strengths, you know what I mean, and hide his weaknesses as opposed to try to strengthen his weaknesses.
I guess
like at what point do you make that decision?
Yeah, I guess it depends on what it is you're asking them to do and they can't do. Right? Like, let's just say, for example, we had, let's just give a crazy example, hypothetical. Right? Let's say Karl Anthony Towns was the only player on the team that could set screens. Right? But his screens were still trash. But he's the only player that can set them. I mean, you have no choice but to still kind of use him to set screens, even though he's not a good screen setter. You know what I'm saying? Until you can bring in a player that sets screens. So I think it depends on, and I'm not saying that, I'm not bashing Cat. This is just a hypothetical example with what Tony was saying is, when do you make an adjustment? I think it depends on what you're asking that player to do. If you have other players that can do that job, you know what I'm saying? If you have other players that can do what you're asking that guy to do, and that player can't do it, then you might say, okay, we're not going to have you doing that. We'll focus on you just shooting the three or whatever it is.
This is an actual good example, and I'm not bashing Cat either. But here's it's a parallel to what you're saying. Mitchell Robinson sets the best screens on the team, right? Mm-hmm. Arguably. Huckporty's gotten better though. But Robinson sets the best screens on the team, but he's not the offensive threat that Cat is. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So Cat screens aren't very good, but the fact that he's an offensive threat, you know what I mean? You're still paying attention to Cat on the screen. You know what I mean? Like, hopefully he don't get called for offensive foul or whatever. But if he gets the screen through, Brunson's gonna be open, or he's mm-hmm. gonna get a good shot, or he's gonna, you know what I mean? Like where Robinson, he's only good for the pick and roll. You know what I mean? You can't transition it to a pick and pop. You can't transition. You know what I mean? Like you have limited options. So what do you do then? Do you use Robinson for those picks, and you know what I mean, or do you take that chance that Cat is gonna get? He's gonna figure this out to where, you know what I mean? Like, it's a threat every time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you probably look at the age of the player, look at their history. If they're 29 years old and they ain't got it yet, you might say he ain't gonna get it. You know what I mean? And you might from the beginning have designed it, a different way. But just hypothetically speaking, you probably have to try to mix it up, and go by game. Oh, he's setting good screens tonight. We're gonna use it. His screens is trash tonight. We'll limit the screens. You know what I'm saying?
Or maybe it's never been drilled.
Maybe it's never been drilled. You never know.
And this goes back to like the push the ball up the floor every mm-hmm. single time. Look up. It has to be the same thing with the screen. Like, this is how you set the screen every single time, whether you getting the ball or not. You know what I mean? Whether you know what I mean? Like, every single time, this is how it has to be. Because
I got another one, and unfortunately, it includes Cat again. What if he can't get your defensive scheme?
I mean, that's kind of the question I was asking from the beginning. I didn't want to call nobody out, but yeah, that's what I was saying, like an impact player. But
Yeah,
if he can't, you that's what I mean. You gotta adjust the scheme. I think if you again, this goes back to the whole zone thing not being utilized over the past couple of years, but last year specifically. That's something that has to be a coaching adjustment. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. You'd have to, but I mean, what if it's consistent? No matter what scheme, he doesn't get it. What do you do?
Listen, if you can't figure out the zone,
you know what I mean? What do you do? Because Cat has a penchant to foul. You know what I mean? Hopefully he can have that under control this year. But let's say every defense you put out there, he struggles with. What do you do? I mean, I think you then at that point you just have to, okay, we're gonna go with what we go with.
Or you utilize him until he take himself out because of foul trouble. You know what I mean? Like
but in the clutch, you gotta have him out there. You know what I mean? And then you just, that you find a way to live with it and hope that the offense is strong enough. But if the Knicks use zone, I think we use a lot more zone this year. I think we're gonna be all right defensively. You know what I'm saying? If we can utilize that zone, put Cat. I mean, Cat is a good passer, so this is just something that I can see with using the zone. Cat's a good passer, which means he can see the game. Right? To be a good passer, you kind of got to be able to see the game a little bit, see things happening before it happens. He's a good passer. So I think in the middle of the zone, he should be good in the middle of the zones to see what's happening and be able to call out and tell people in front of him, I see this, I see that, I see this, I see that, because he has a good eye for the game. I think he should be able to see that. He may not be able to see it himself while he's playing defense man to man, but in the zone, if he's in the middle of the zone, I feel that he should be able to see what's happening and be able to bark out instructions. So in some ways be like a middle linebacker of the zone. Be like a middle linebacker of the zone. I think he can, because I think that passing ability, you've got to be able to see, what players are doing and where they're going. And that's one of the reasons why you can pass. And I think he can translate that ability to being in the middle of his zone and barking out instructions to his teammates. I think you can transition that. So I don't know. Andre said, can you really see Cat recovering in some zone in a zone defense? If he's in the middle of the defense, he doesn't have to recover much. You're not asking him to run from the elbow to the 3-point line. You're asking him to stay within the paint and protect the paint.
Yeah, step out for your 3 seconds. You know what I mean? So you don't get your 3 seconds. That's the most he's gonna have to read, as far as like when to get out and where to get out.
Yeah, and then if he had to recover somewhere, to me that means the top of our zone got broke down. You know what I mean? So if he's playing that middle of that zone, box to box or whatever, he doesn't have to recover that much any place because he's not on the perimeter. But anyway, Tony, good. I know we both had long days.
Sure.
I had a 12, 13-hour day. I know you had a long day, probably about the same amount of hours. So we had some good conversations tonight. More. What'd you say?
I said I'll be back to work in about 6 more.
Yeah, me too. Well, maybe not 6 more, but yeah, I feel you. But folks, we're gonna head up out of here. We definitely appreciate your time tonight. A lot of stuff coming up. You know what I mean? The schedule will be out soon, and a lot of things starting to happen. It's starting to pick up, baby. Season's almost here. Can't wait. Tony, any last words before we get out of here?
I'm trying to squeeze a show in tomorrow, man. So check me out tomorrow. Hopefully, I can get it done. It's been a busy summer, but yeah. Till next time, man.
Definitely been a busy one, no doubt. But it's about to settle down, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate your time. We out. Peace.
This is NBK, nothing but Knicks. When Sim passed the assist, you know that it's #1 show that breaks down the game. If you can't play defense, stay out my way. Dribble the ball, come down the lane. 5 seconds on the shot clock, who gon' win us the game? You wanna hear Nick updates and trade rumors? Post-game reviews, this the place to tune in. Tell a friend just to keep the ball moving. Like the page if you feeling the movement. Every game we coming to win. Give us a sub like a player that came off the bench. This is NBK, nothing but Knicks.